The Hollow Knight Double LP, originally pressed in 2018 by Ghost Ramp and their 36th album in their catalog to date.
Alright, what's going on, Forgotten Nation? I'm your host, FG, and we're revisiting the world of Hollow Knight. It's actually been quite some time since the last time we looked at Hollow Knight. As a matter of fact, I'm willing to bet that a lot of you may remember me just because of that original video. It was one of my earliest unboxings where we actually took a look at the collector's edition of Hollow Knight, released by Fangamer. When I first made that video, I actually never played Hollow Knight at the time. And based on a lot of the comments, it seems like a lot of people were actually angry about some of the things I've said. Some were impressed based on my initial research, but then there were some where they really nailed the coffin. So that said, I was actually a little afraid of getting back into this one here, but it was thanks to viewer suggestions and recommendation that I do check out this vinyl. This is one I had in my collection for quite a bit of time now, and while I did have plans to cover it as a video here, I was very scared following when I first made that video way back when. So I just want to say thanks to everyone that supported me up to this point, and more importantly, those that wanted me to check out this vinyl and make a video on it. This wouldn't be possible without you. As a matter of fact, getting to play Hollow Knight again, which, honestly, it is a long game. Getting the footage took nearly 18 hours just to get everything I needed, from the beginning of the game all the way to the White Palace. But I want to make sure we did it just right to cover everything there is about the world of Hollow Knight. So, for those that are new, let's talk a little bit about what makes Hollow Knight so special. Starting with, what is Hollow Knight?
Hollow Knight, created by Team Cherry and released in 2017, is a Metroidvania set in a bug-sized world, but is an adventure of grand proportions. The game has you take control of the knights, as they find themselves in the land of Hollow Nest, where long ago an ancient kingdom fell to ruin when an unseen evil took control over its citizens through their dreams, known to those as the Infection. To stop this evil, the Pale King used a pure vessel born from the abyss infused with the power of the Void, the Hollow Knight, to stop the Infection and stop the evil for good. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough to stop the Infection, only slowed down. Many years passed following the kingdom's ruin and the Hollow Knight's containment, and Hollow Knight has lost control over the Infection, which now continues to ravage Hollow Nest. What the Knight's role is in all this, and how to stop the Infection for good, that's ultimately up to the player to discover.
There's been a lot of games in the Metroidvania genre that have been hit or miss over the years, and I think the biggest reason that Hollow Knight is one of those games that did incredibly well is because of two reasons that make a Metroidvania so great. The first is its design and control. This is a game that feels very good to control. It never feels to a point where it's unfair or unbalanced. What you explore is up to your own volition, and it's got plenty of secrets, nooks and crannies, and Easter eggs, and it feels very rewarding as a result. And when it comes to the fighting and the boss fights, you learn their patterns and you learn to overcome them. It never gets to a point where it feels like it's the game's fault that I'm struggling. Even though there were some moments where I did struggle, I struggled quite a bit as a matter of fact. But overall, I do think that this is a game that's incredibly well polished and feels good to the very end. And then for the world building and its lore implications, this is a game that has a lot of detail to it. And there are some things that some gamers may never pick up on if they're not looking with a keen eye. As a matter of fact, the very lore to the game can confuse a lot of players. And that is something that's similar with some different Metroidvanias out there. But overall, all the pieces are there, and there is this big lore that's being told that you need to discover for yourself. And between having the bug environment too, I feel like the world of Hollow Knight being this bug world full of awestruck, mystery, and having these moments where the game just looks incredible, really does owe itself to being something incredible. And to that extension, that includes the soundtrack. There's a lot to be owed to its design thanks to the soundtrack, and I think that is part of the game's overall success.
The soundtrack of Hollow Knight was composed by Christopher Larkin, which still serves as his best work to date. Much of the music of Hollow Knight is in parts of the very world of Hollow Knight, which at one moment can be whimsical and have a sense of mystery, while the next moment can pick up with the action on screen, adding more instruments and percussion to the mix. It's made to perfectly capture the world, but the game's soundtrack isn't simply its music. There's plenty of moments where the atmosphere alone can convince the player of the world that's being inhabited. It's also worth noting that there are some differences with the soundtrack in the game that aren't shown here in this official release. The best example is with the City of Tears, which will have a longer version in-game that doesn't feature the vocal tracks all the time. I won't go into too much detail about the differences from gameplay to soundtrack, but just be aware of this. That said, with a total of 26 tracks, one of which actually features music from one of the game's revealed trailers, what we have here is an incredible orchestral score across 2-picture discs.
I personally can't say a lot about Christopher Larkin and his work before Hollow Knight, but I really do think that this was a big game in his career that really did help establish what the world needed and how he was able to deliver with it. The soundtrack here is unique in the form that, whereas other orchestral soundtracks do have that sense of environment to it, this one feels much more emphasized when it comes to the action aspects of the game, and it does build when you get to those certain moments. And I think what he did was incredibly well done, between having some familiar melodies, such as if you compare Dirtmouth to Greenpath, for example, you hear a lot of the main riffs from Hollow Knight and its different areas, and the melodies that come as part of it. I think what we have here is an incredible set of sound pieces that do offer moments of action, suspense, but also calm and serenity, I guess is the best way to put it. But overall, I feel like there's plenty to be shown here that is different enough that it does feel great to listen to again and again. And I think that the format does work especially well here on the turntable. So that said, let's take a look at the Hollow Knight Double LP.
Uniquely to this album, all the artwork is in monotone, shades of black and white, with the knight taking front and center on the front of the outer sleeve.
The front of the outer sleeve immediately captures your attention with the knight, having the two tones between his normal self and his darker self, the shade, the void. But overall, I feel like what we have here makes for an incredible contemporary art piece that is made to be displayed. I know I say this about a lot of the vinyls I've covered in the past, but honestly, along with some other ones that would come out later, I feel like vinyls more often than not are really starting to feel like they are their own little art pieces. And this is one that's especially really up there in terms of displayability. I think it looks really cool, and opting in for the only 2 colors really does owe a lot to the knight's design. Between his regular self that looks like a bony exterior to his inner shade, which manifests as though it were shadows. Even though it might be shadows, I think I might piss off some people with this part. That said though, I think immediately the first thing this vinyl does is capture your attention. And that starts out really strong. But that's just it. That's how it starts.
The backside, while a little less interesting, does feature a silhouette of the knight, along with the following words: Soul of Worm, Soul of Root, Heart of Void.
When we make our way to the backside, it's actually incredibly basic, all things considered. Just a silhouette of the knight, which actually might be his actual size if we're not comparing the collectible piece over there. Just saying. Though I do want to give attention though to the 3 words below: Soul of Worm, Soul of Root, Heart of Void. It may not seem like much, but these are actually pretty significant words regarding the lore of the knights and what happens later on in the game. I won't go into too much to try to avoid spoilers, and there will be spoilers coming up very soon, so be wary of that. But these are some 3 words that are important to the game's lore and storytelling. I just wish there was a little more happening on the back here. That said though, before we open it up, I do want to bring attention to something they include on the inside, and that is an art card. Or I guess in this case you consider more of a track listing, because it does have the full list of songs on the backside. And the breakdown of this album is actually pretty unique, where Vinyl 1 is known as Soul, Vinyl 2 is known as Void. I've seen some vinyls do this in the past, but I think it's pretty neat, all things considered. Now, the best part of this art card, though, is the other side. This is some really good art, by the way. Here we have the knight, or rather his shade form, and honestly, I think this is a unique art piece I don't know who did the art behind this one, but it looks really cool. I almost wish this was the backside of the album just to display it more. It's not often that you find yourself displaying the track listing as opposed to the rest. But if you want a really cool piece of artwork from Hollow Knight, this is it right here. And I love the way it looks. That said though, let's make our way inside of the vinyl album and see what else there has to offer.
The inside artwork, I'll be honest, I'm not too sure what this is trying to be. It is unique though.
The world of Hollow Knight has some really unique designs, all things considered. The thing is though, I really don't recognize what this is trying to be. My guess has to be those eggs that you see every now and then on the ground, or in maybe a later sense, it could be the black egg. It's very detailed though with the use of the circles and the arches, but that said, I simply don't recognize what this is trying to be. It has its lighter side, but it's mostly leaning more on the darker side. This is supposed to be something, but I just don't know what it is. I almost think it's one of the soul fragments that they have like that like screaming like shape to them. But this is what I want to know in the comments down below. Do you recognize what this is? Because I actually don't recognize it myself, I'm sorry to say. It looks cool though. Presentable? It's up for debates. But I think this is some really cool artwork.
Making our way to the inner sleeves, each showcases a look at what we'll see in just a moment, the Kingsoul and the Voidheart. Without going into too many spoilers, the Kingsoul is a significant item to learning more about the knight's role in the game. Obtained through the course of the game, the knight collects two halves of the Kingsoul, one from the White Queen and another from the White Palace. Both give some reveals as to what events unfolded before the knight arrived at Hollow Nest. And when the ultimate truth is revealed, the Kingsoul transforms into the Voidheart. The Voidheart is the key to the game's good ending, but that's where I'll stop.
I'm actually really surprised that they decided to go with these as the vinyls. And that includes the inner sleeves too. The Voidheart and the Kingsoul are important items to the game's lore. And for those that haven't played Hollow Knight, you're probably not going to know what these are in the first place, especially the first time you open this up. But for those that have played the game, you know these designs and you know how cool they are. That said, talking about the inner sleeves, these are actually pretty flimsy, all things considered. I feel like they're very easy to bend, and while they do a job of protecting the vinyl, I can't help but feel that we could have had something a little more premium, more like a cardboard stock, or something at least a little more durable. I feel like it bends way too easy that I'm more worried about it getting destroyed than actually having it hold the record. I can't speak of how long this will last compared to other ones I've had in my collection, but it does worry me that the material they chose was more on the flimsy side, which kind of sucks. That's actually my only major grievance of the packaging of this one, but it's really cool to say nonetheless. Up next, we got the most exciting part of this release.
No doubt to many fans, the highlight of this LP is the vinyl records. Full picture discs that feature the Kingsoul and Voidheart in full, front and back, and with some serious heft to them.
No doubt for any fan of the game, having something like this in a physical form is really cool. And that's just to mention the size of it too. This is incredibly detailed for being a picture disc. High quality, all things considered. But now let's talk from the music perspective. The thing with picture disc is that they're known because of how they're pressed differently compared to a standard vinyl to have way more pops and crackles as a result. Now, this picture disc is pretty different from the ones I've seen, all things considered. It actually really does have some more heft to it compared to what I have in my collection personally. But that said, there's just no escaping that this set does have the pops and crackles that comes with being a picture disc. And that's pretty disappointing when you have your favorite tracks, but you notice the pops and crackles that happen. And they knew about this too, Ghost Ramp. So what they did was include a download code to the digital soundtrack with this release. So if you don't have a turntable and you want it just for its presentation, you can do just that. But for someone like me that likes it because it's vinyl, but wishes that it didn't have the pops and crackles, it's a little disappointing. No matter how many times you try to brush the top or scrub it with one of those water kits, you know what I'm talking about. The point is, it just can't be helped. So it's a little disappointing. But what we have here, these look incredible. And it's just the perfect physical collector's piece from the world of Hollow Knight. That's how it looks. And overall, I love the presentation of this. But how's it sound? Are the pops and crackles that bad? Is it something that most people may not even care about? Well, let's transition to the samples. I'll be honest, choosing samples is always hard, but I feel like what we have here is a pretty good balance, all things considered, of the world of Hollow Knight and some of the boss fights that you'll see in it. But more importantly, also trying to avoid as much spoilers as possible. So that said, let's take a look at some samples from the world of Hollow Knight. This is the Hollow Knight Double LP. Much like the duality of the knight between his outer shell and his inner shade, I feel like this release is going to have a divide between die-hard fans of the game and those that really just want to listen to the music. What we have here between the presentation and overall design is honestly one of my favorites to date in my vinyl collection. It looks great, and any fan of the game would love this. But if you just want to listen to the music, then the pops and the crackles that the picture design will have does really leave some hesitation or just some negative thoughts of this release. I can't help but feel that there are times where when I'm listening to this, I want less pops and crackles, but because of the very nature of the picture disc, no matter how many times you clean it, you're just not going to be able to escape it, which is pretty disappointing for some, I know. So this is a release where you gotta ask, is this something you want to have because you're a fan, even if you don't mind all the pops and crackles, or is it a deal breaker that it just doesn't sound very good? And that includes having the digital download code. For me, I absolutely love this and everything it has to offer, so it gets my recommendation. If you're a fan of Hollow Knight, you're gonna love this especially. If you're someone that wants to listen to the music, well, you might be better off with the digital soundtrack, all things considered, unless they do make another variant of this in the future that's more basic. But overall though, I heavily recommend this for anyone with a turntable, or even just to display proudly and use that digital code. That said, I got mine from Fangamer, but this is currently out of stock at the time of this recording, so if it does go back in stock, then I'll leave a link in the description down below for those that want to add this to their own collection. But that's going to do it for this hands-on session of Hollow Knight, the double LP. So if you want to see more videos like this, or you have some other suggestions of some vinyl records for me to cover, the best place to let me know is in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, everyone, and as always, I'll see you in the next video. And I gotta give an honorable shout out to the best solo drop of 2017. Give it up to Conifer for the map theme of all time. Sing with me. I can't believe I didn't make it into this vinyl.